All right, good afternoon. My name's Matt Spruill, and I, along with, you'll see Joe here in a second, are going to present the Joint Virtual World Framework pilot project that we just completed. Joe and I could not travel, so that's why we brought him in Skype, and we got a little feedback on that, but it'll be fun. Next slide. This is my agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about the program. Joe's going to get up and do some opening remarks from the JCW building in Suffolk, Virginia. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the program and what we did. We're going to show you the operational demo we have online right now using the virtual world framework, and also 2 additional experiments, or what we call our stretch goals for the project. Cut over to the Skype. And Joe Camacho, you're on.
Okay, thanks very much, Matt. So ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your tolerance of me coming in on my own personal phone via Skype. I'm talking to you here from what appears to be the lobby in Suffolk, where the Joint Staff South is located, but actually this is just a prop. I'm on the golf course, and I'm doing this in between 9 holes. I'm kidding, of course. So I'm happy to have the opportunity to provide some opening remarks about this project that Matt and the team are going to brief and then demonstrate, because I think it's important how we got far and what it is, in fact, that he's going to explain to you that we've done. A couple of points that I think are very important. Number one, we have teamed with the ADL CoLab under Mr. DiGiovanni's funding for R&D in order to create a mobile piece and then to move forward and integrate that mobile piece into a virtual world framework. We could not have done it without their technical expertise and their advice from the very, very beginning when we met with them and we got a mobile strategy, came up with a mobile architecture in order to have a mobile capability. But more importantly, as we dealt with them in figuring out how we wanted to tackle this very tough technical challenge with the virtual world framework that I think Matt's going to get into some of the details of. So at the end of the day, what have we done? We have demonstrated that by partnering and sharing and collaborating with technical knowledge back and forth, we can make a first step, a very first baby step, towards delivering training using a virtual world framework on a mobile device to begin with, and then ultimately moving into our desktops once we solve all the technical challenges there, and then move into a very highly collaborative environment, perhaps in a collective training environment. So I think that these things are very significant. We did not get exactly where I wanted to go in the beginning because, frankly, we ran out of money and we ran out of time, and the technical challenges were pretty overwhelming. But I think, as you'll see here, as Matt describes the prototype and where we are, I think you'll understand how difficult the challenges were, but I think more importantly, you'll see what a significant step it was in the direction that where we want to be in the future relative to the use of the virtual world framework to deliver training to the warfighter. And we chose a couple of the courses that on mobile, and we particularly chose the CTIP course for the virtual world framework because of the importance to DoD of that particular topic matter. So I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to hang out here and listen in, and I'll be around for any questions at the very end. But thanks again for tolerating me coming in via Skype. I think it's kind of neat here that everyone in the lobby is looking at me while I'm talking to my phone, and we've got a sign that says be quiet because this is a virtual training conference. But I can promise you that it's a result of being innovative whenever you have travel restrictions that don't allow you to go to Orlando. But thank you very much, and Matt, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Okay, great. Next slide, please. So before I really get started, there's a couple people in the room that I need to point out. First is Nancy Johnson from CTC, back there on vacation, and and Howard Ball from ECS. So the team that put this together, these are really the 2 kingpins. Nancy led the overall project, and Howard Ball led the BWF component of the project. You know, I don't want to talk JavaScript up here, so if you have really hard questions, mobile app is Nancy, and mobile BWF is Howard afterwards. If you were at Game Tech last year, or you've been to any of the Joe speeches in the last year, you recognize the JKO pyramid. And I'm going to describe a little bit and talk about the requirement here and why it relates to this. Last year, Joe briefed this. The bottom layer is the JKO architecture, and the 800 or so level 1, level 2 IMI courses are in that layer. The center layer is our desktop simulation and advanced courses. So things like small group scenario trainer, and also our VCAT and some of our 3CT cross-cultural competence trainer level 3 and 4 courses are in that band. Those courses have lesson content followed up by an interactive scenario at the end. So you get to learn something, then you get to practice it. And learn something and practice it, and then go into a culminating exercise. Well, there's 800 or so courses that are slide flippers that don't have that. So how do we inject that interactive exercise into these courses so that you could have a place to practice what you just learned? Well, that's what we came up with. Okay, let's insert the BWF into a level 1 course. Oh, by the way, the CTIP course is mandatory training for everybody in DoD. It's historically in the top five of all courses on JKO, and it's being taken and passed by thousands of people every week. Okay, so you have a course that has a high demand. That's a slide flipper. It's a good course, but it's a slide flipper. Okay, so how do you take all the cues that you learn in the CTIP course and then practice it at the end? And that's where we put the BWF module onto the end of it. Last year, the mobile learning's at the top of the pyramid. When this was briefed last year, we were just in the middle of developing the JKO Mobile app program, and then it's tying into the virtual worlds. And so this vision that was briefed last year is finally coming to full realization, even if it's just a pilot program for now. Next slide. The JKO Mobile pilot program, how many people in here have heard about this? Okay, not a lot. It's a relatively new program that was launched in the latter part of the summer. It was a soft start. We wanted people to discover it. It's gaining traction. JKO has gone mobile, and there's probably 10 to 15 courses available right now today on mobile. Level 1 through level 3 courses. Okay? Some of the courses that are in that center band, the VCATs and 3CTs, those are available on mobile as well. It is a pilot program. It's a collaborative venture between JKO and ADL, and the pictures that you're seeing now are the soon-to-be-released version of JKO Mobile app that has a public access area to it. So right now you have to go online to JKO, you have to be a JKO user. You have to go online, get a PIN, and then go download the app from either the Apple App Store or Google Play, put in your PIN, and then get into the content. We've opened it up, we have a public access area. So some courses like CTIP are going to be in the public access area because it's not just DoD that we need to work with to deliver some of that content. And you can download that. If you're a JKO user, you can get your PIN now. If you're not, we're in the approval process for the version for the Apple always takes longer than Android. Okay, so we're in the approval process of the updated version for Apple. As soon as they approve that, we'll upload the public access app onto the stores. Next slide. This is important because part of this project was taking the desktop CTIP mobile or desktop CTIP course and the CTIP mobile course that was developed for the MOLE program, which is a NATO program, and convert it to be able to be used inside of the JKO app. Inside the JKO app, there's tracking, there's bookmarking, there's a lot of very specific scripting that needs to be put in there. And Nancy and the CTC team spent a lot of time coding that so that it would operate properly within the JKO app. And then once you go through this course, you learn all the content, you actually get credit. So if you're an LMS user or JKO user, you can go back to the LMS on your desktop and get your certificate, because a lot of people require you to print those certificates and turn them in, like old school. And then after that, you're offered the chance to go into this virtual world framework interactive scenario. And that's the tie-in between the two efforts. Next slide. So when we first started this project, and this project was really only about 4 months long. It wasn't really full-time, and it wasn't a very long project. We had some major challenges up front. The first one was, are we going to do desktop or mobile? This is before we went down the mobile route. How are we going to do this? The problem is, well, the reality is 97% of all JKO users use Internet Explorer. 8, 7, and 9, versions 8, 7, and 9 in that order. IE and VWF are not compatible because of WebGL, just flat out. And local DAAs don't necessarily allow the WebSockets to pass through the networks. Okay, so you got 2 of the 5 components of the VWF that are automatically restricted from being used. Operationally, if you look at that, let's say we take CTIP desktop and we put a link to the VWF on the desktop course, and 97% of those people are on Internet Explorer. The other 2.5 are like on Chrome. And, they get to the end of the course, they click on the link, and it opens up their Internet Explorer, and it goes, sorry, you can't go to the VWF because it's not compatible. We already get 300 help calls to our tickets to our help desk every day. We don't need 5,000 more. Okay, so that was operationally that was one of the major reasons why we didn't go desktop. So we decided. So what was the answer? Go mobile. We had the JKO mobile app had just come out, and we said, okay, we're going to go mobile. So we spent a lot of time talking to some very smart people about how we can do that. We'll come back to that in lessons learned. The second one was performance. Okay, so the first thing we did when we were told, okay, we're going to go mobile with the VWF, because not only are we doing a VWF project, which is really new, but oh, by the way, we're going to put it on mobile. Okay, we found that mobile was 10 times slower than desktop running VWF environment, primarily due to JavaScript. There was issues with downloading of environments, and we're going to talk about that in one of the experiments. So that meant we had to have a lightweight design. We couldn't download the entire environment, and the first time you click on it, you kind of had to load a scene and then load another scene, and then click on something and load another scene. So that was one of the first things we did. Challenge number 3 was, okay, what's the target device? Well, right out of the box we said Android 4.0, it's coming out. There's not a lot of phones with it. Samsung Galaxy S3 had just come out, and that was actually the target device because it has a dual-core processor. And then we had to have Firefox 18 Plus on there. Okay, phones don't come with Firefox 18 Plus. Okay, well, we count, JKO Mobile is a bring your own device. We count on the average user knowing that they have to download apps when they need them. I'll give you an example. I'm not a young guy, okay? But my dad and I write Battlefield staff ride guides. And I was in Manassas this last year looking at second Manassas battle. And it was overcast, and my dad writes the book and I do the scouting. And I was figuring out how to go from point A to point B. And in the instructions it said go southwest. Well, it was cloudy, so I couldn't see the sun, didn't know where it goes, didn't know where to go. I didn't have my compass with me, but I had my phone. So I downloaded the compass. In about a minute, I had the compass on my phone, and I was moving down the road. So we rely on people knowing that if they get to something and they need another widget or they need another app, they'll just go download it. Okay. And then the fourth challenge, and this is really Joe's challenge to us, was it must be operational, link to the CTIP course, so figure out the vignettes and make it post-op simple. Okay, the first version of this we had hotspots all over the place, and it became a hunt and seek game, and we were going to make it difficult, and he kind of reined us in and said, okay, it's a pilot program, okay, this mobile stuff's new to a lot of these older people, and BWF it certainly is. It's not a problem for the 20-somethings, but for the older generation it is. So let's make it post office simple. And ask him sometime what he means about that. It's kind of enlightening. Next slide. So we're going to move right into the demo. This is a live demo, so it's not a video, so bear with us for a second. We're going to bring up a mobile device over here. Howard's going to drive it. We're going to take you through the environment and kind of show you what we did.
All right, let me just bring up.
Okay, so Howard's going to play this upside down. So you go in, you click the link, it takes you to several instruction pages. We didn't want to leave any doubt in anybody's head how to navigate through the environment. Just click through. And then you land in the environment. And so let me orient you to the environment. On the lower right-hand corner, don't touch it, is the AAR button. You get an AAR at the end of this vignette with the answers and questions that you took. In the middle is kind of a progress bar, and below that are instructions for basic, swipe right, swipe left, move right, move left type of. On the help button on the lower left, you can actually turn that off. Okay, if it starts to get to you after a while. Upper left is, don't click on it, is the instructions in case you have to go back and review the instructions. And the upper right is a mini map, so tap on that. The mini map has a pretty cool feature. It shows you where you are, and then it shows your aspect of angle of view. There's lots of, in this village, there's lots of roads and places, and you'll easily get lost if you don't have that mini map. So you can close that mini map, Howard. And go ahead and tap and go to the next scene. So like I said, at first we had, so what you're doing in here is you're looking for indicators and cues of trafficking in persons. And we had 3 vignettes. We're focused on forced labor, okay, instead of prostitution or child soldiering, which are the other 2 types of trafficking in persons. We had a truck scene near a truck, and we had the cafe scene near a cafe, and the child beggar scene on the corner of a street. And we were going to shade those areas, but when we first started producing alphas and betas, our users liked the teardrop effect as opposed to the shaded indicator. So just make it simple enough for us to go through the vignette. So we have these teardrops that you tap, and it brings up basically a little machinima video. It has some sound. And then you answer questions. So what did you see? Why was it a problem? And then what do you do about it? So basically there's 3 of those vignettes in there. No, that's okay. Go ahead and go to the next scene. Or actually go to the AR. So after you go through these 3 vignettes, if you complete all 3, it automatically goes to the AR. If you want to go ahead and go to it early, you can do that. Go ahead. There's some instructions there for you, and then there's all the questions that you were asked and answered, and whether you got them correct or not. And if you got them incorrect, you can tap on the question, and it'll tell you what you answered and then what the correct answer was. So the real learning of the vignettes really comes into play here. So you close that, and then you're given a mission to go find the gold star. made the post office simple, next scene. You could have actually gone down any one of those roads. And then it's just a simple message file that you can spin. And this one takes the longest because it's using all the components of the BWF, and that's one of the issues we found on mobile. Okay, let's just go back over to PowerPoint. So let's go to the next slide. So we felt it was important to kind of articulate some of those lessons that we've learned, and we learned a ton, both at the tactical engineer coding level up through the program management. You know, kind of why do we do things? The first one was, well, we really could have used some more documentation. When we first started this project, there was not a lot of documentation on virtualworldframework.com. I got to hand it to them though. I was on it last week. There's a lot more, to include videos of how to do things. So it's getting a lot better. But you know, when we first started this project in December, there wasn't a lot of user base, so there was not a lot of documentation. Probably the most important lesson we learned is that the BWF is really about collaboration. The 3D is just one driver. For the last year or so, we've seen all these demos of the BWF, and we always got focused on the 3D component. That's really not what it's about. It's really about the collaboration. We're going to show you a demo in a little bit where we're implementing some of the collaboration features, but it's meant for multiple people to come into the world and collaborate and share. Unlike DCO, but in an environment. And it's easy to get pulled off on that and get focused on WebGL and the 3D part of it. The BWF 3D drivers are not yet optimized for mobile. It's not. And you know, it's a young program, and it works well on Firefox and well on Google Chrome. I don't think anybody really thought that we were going to go to mobile first, or you know, right out of the gate. So, but you know, explain why we did that. The next lesson was don't always believe what people tell you about a technology. We talked to a lot of smart people, and we got a lot of great ideas early on. And we reached out to even more because we were trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this on mobile? We got a whole bunch of great ideas, and we researched them all. And if we had just trusted them, and it's not their fault, they're just really smart people that have a lot of great ideas. If we just trusted them, you know, up front, we probably would have failed. And the key here is, you know, gather the information and then try all this stuff out for yourself. Because you and your engineers are going to learn a lot about the technology and the technologies inside of the framework. And if you don't do it yourself, you're just not going to learn what will not work and on what platform and what version of this. And I mean, we have the VWF run on some phones we didn't think we would ever be able to do, and that's by fluke. Still haven't figured out some of those. Learning objectives should be paramount of specified technology. A lot of times we got enamored with what could be in this environment and the technology, and we pulled ourselves away from what are the learning objectives, and we had to constantly pull ourselves back in and go, okay, wait a minute, we have a specific learning objective here. Let's stick to it and make it simple enough to work instead of being enamored with bright, shiny objects. One of the biggest bottlenecks is memory. The collada files are large. There's not a lot of memory on the phone many times. We found memory issues with the server. So memory is an issue, and it's something we're going to have to address over time. And there's really not a lot of practical examples of BWF usage. We believe ours is the first one to go operational because what we just showed you there is now online, operational, and available to anybody that goes in and takes the BWF course and wants to go into the vignettes. So it's online right now. Next slide. Okay, so why is this important? Why is this important for our community? It's operational. We actually have, new technologies need to be thrown out there, and then people need to get, grab them, and they need to massage them, and they need to, kind of mold it in the way that they need to see it, and then they need to use it. And that's what we've done. We've taken this framework that was sponsored by our boss's boss, and we said, okay, we're going to do something with it. And so we've taken it, and we've molded it, and played with it like clay, and it's not perfect, and it's not exactly what everybody expected, but it's in compliance. It's a mobile capability while everybody else is doing desktop. So we talk to some people and they're like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Okay, that doesn't make any sense because they're on mobile. Okay, there's no click. It's tap. And then we believe this helps grow the development community. There's not a large, development community base that has all the blogs and everything where they're communicating about, okay, I wrote code to do it this way, and how do you do that? I mean, you go out and do a search for that right now, you're not going to find a lot. You go to virtualworldframework.com this week, you'll find a lot more. But there's not the developer base out there that helps the engineers get over hurdles. And we believe that, doing the things that we did and communicating and with the other developers, that we're helping grow the community. And that's why we think this is so important. Next slide. So I'm going to talk, the next part of this, next few minutes, we're going to show you two, we call them experiments, we call them stretch goals. They were additional work we did on top of delivering an operational environment and the mobile course, okay? So in the first one was a series of experiments that ended up, and we're going to show you a demo here in just a second. And the first one was 3 phases. And the first part was to measure the performance of mobile devices running native VWF components. And the results were many times the scene would not load, or part of the scene would load, but not the whole thing. And many times we could not get any motion at all. So we decided to do the second experiment, which was to measure the performance of mobile devices to run native VWF nodes, materials, and reduced volume 2D plane meshes mapped as 2D imagery called sprites. And that worked well with synchronization, but we got a lot of flickering, okay, when we tried to give the sprite motion, like walking. So we ended up with the third experiment, which was to measure the performance of mobile devices to run VWF nodes with no meshes or materials and only using sprites. And that worked well. And so let's cut over to that. We're not going to do this on mobile, we're doing this one on desktop. And so in this scene you have 2 choices. You can either do free play or start an exercise. So let's start the exercise. And the exercise will run. That's a little violent, but just roll with it. So what you see here is a 2D scene with the sprites given motion overlaid on top of VWF. Okay. There's your violence. And then you're asked a few questions on your knowledge of CTIP. We'll let one pop up and then we can close that out, Howard. So just pick an answer, wrong, and submit it, and just go ahead and close that out. There's a series of questions, and then you're done. Okay, and the third thing, the last thing I want to show you is what we call CTIP 2. And what we did was we worked with ADL on this particular one. In fact, it was actually Rob Chadwick. He helped us re-engineer it so it's in full compliance of the VWF architectural design. And its WebGL has all the components of the VWF, and as a matter of fact, remember I was talking about that collaboration part. Average JKO user doesn't need collaboration when they're looking at a single course. What Howard's doing now is he's actually controlling the view on the desktop from his mobile phone. So he's using the collaboration features to do a remote viewing. Okay? So not too sexy, but it steps in the right direction. This was a follow-on that we did actually the last couple of weeks of the contract, actually, right in the middle of doing an acceptance test of the operational environment. Some of the engineers got together and worked with Rob Chadwick and put this together. So you can't really tap on the questions and answers, but you can navigate through the scene using this remote collaboration part. So like I said, take the widget, mold it with, mold the clay the way you see it, and then spit something out and start to use it. Okay, thanks, Howard. Let's see if Joe's still up on Skype. All right, so we got about 10 minutes left, I think. Any questions? No questions? Bonus. All right, thank you very much. All right, thanks, Joe.